Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special hangout covering the indirect tax related proposals in the Finance Bill 2018. The Finance Minister presented his fourth budget and the first budget after the introduction of GST. The Finance Bill, there were lots of expectations around tinkering of the corporate tax rates and the changes in the long-term capital gains, etc. Most of those changes have taken place. Apart from the tax proposals, on a macro basis, government has announced several schemes, several proposals. The massive national health insurance program for the poor again is something which is an important sort of proposal in this budget. The budget math is also very driven by the buoyancy in tax collections, particularly on account of GST. I think we've seen an interesting math for financial year 18-19. And to take us through some of the changes, key changes relating to the indirect tax, and also look at these changes in the context of GST, I'm joined by Mr. Lakshmikumaran, the founder and managing partner of Lakshmikumaran and Sridharan. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm also joined by my colleague Aditya Narkani, who's the assistant editor of our GST portal, GST Sutra. Aditya, before we look at the Finance Bill 2018, if you could quickly take us through some key highlights from the economic survey, wherein the survey has sort of lauded the GST implementation.
Absolutely. Well, the most, the primary key highlight of the economic survey was that it gave us, it said that there are 50% increase in the number of indirect taxpayers after the introduction of GST. That's a huge number. And especially by the small enterprises, there was actually voluntary registration. As on December 2017, there were around 9.8 million unique GST registrants. 3.4 million were new, and around 6.4 million were existing. About 1.7 million registrants who were below the threshold limit, that is of 20 lakhs, even then voluntarily registered. About 1.6 million taxpayers are registered under the composition scheme. But one interesting fact over here is that even though there were around 1.9 million of registrants who are sized between 20 lakhs and the composition threshold of 1.5 crores. Even despite that, they have taken registration because they are not opted for the composition scheme because the larger firms are not able to secure ITC on those purchases. Maharashtra, UP, Tamil Nadu, and Gujarat are the states with greatest number of GST registrants. West Bengal and UP have seen large increases in the number of tax registrants compared to the old tax regime. As regards the international trade or interstate trade, you can see that 5 states, namely Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Telangana, have accounted for around 70% of exports. And one, on the the economic survey that the GST has lauded the GST technology for cooperative federalism, which can apply to many other policy reforms. On the revenue performance, though we may have seen the numbers tinkering a bit in between, but it has said that surprisingly robust revenue that has the GST has garnered over the 5 months. And yes, they have said that these are just early days of a disruptive change, and there is a positive feel to the economic survey in regards to the revenue.
Right. Mr. Lakshmikumaran, looking at these numbers, and the Chief Economic Advisor particularly had lots of praise on this GST reform. Are you sort of surprised with the numbers in the economic survey on the GST compliance and effect? And did that sort of set the stage for the Finance Minister to take some sort of bold decisions considering the buoyancy in GST?
I think let us divide the entire discussion into 2 or 3 parts. As far as the GST registration number going up and consequently expected revenues going up in the future months, That is a separate chapter. As far as the finance budget is concerned this year, the finance minister did not do anything on the GST portion. Nothing. He cannot do anything because the GST Council recommendation alone can be implemented. The only thing which was done by him was with regard to the aircraft engines which were imported from 1st of July to 7th of July and for repair purposes, etc., whether they should be given exemption or not. The GST Council already given the exemption. Being retrospective in nature, they introduced as a part of the budget. Otherwise, there are no changes as far as the GST is concerned, and we don't expect them to make any changes here. The changes will always be made only as per the recommendation of the GST Council, and therefore it is not going to be any more budget secret as far as the GST changes are concerned, because the briefing is done as soon as the GST Council meeting is over.
Mr. Lakshmikumaran, sorry to interrupt. My point well taken that we wouldn't have seen GST changes in the finance bill, but my question was at a more broader context. The healthy GST collection and compliance and the consequential revenue collection from the GST in the last few months perhaps would have had an impact on the way the budget is framed for the coming year. It's mainly the collection number which I was referring to. So any observations on that part?
I mean, I don't think it influenced him either way, because when you're looking at the customs and also income tax, his direction is very clearly to maximize the collections, plug the loopholes, and protect the domestic industry as much as possible. So therefore, the consideration by which he has gone about in both the direct and indirect tax proposals in the budget is basically on this particular thing, namely widen the tax base, plug the loopholes, and protect the domestic industry wherever possible within the framework of the WTO, etc., and also address the trade facilitation measures, because India became a member of the Trade Facilitation Committee, and therefore they are obliged to make certain amendments to facilitate the trade as far as the custom clearance are concerned. And the finance minister was addressing those issues when we are dealing with the customs or with the direct taxes. I don't think the buoyancy or non-buoyancy of the GST had any influence as far as these proposals are concerned, because his accent and focus was very different here.
Right. Looking at the specific proposals, particularly the changes that he's made in the customs rates, would you like to comment upon a trend which is emerging from this, and what might be the impact of some of these changes?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question, Amir. In the past few years, in fact, from post 1991, when the Dr. Manmohan Singh gave the finance budget, the accent was to reduce the custom duties on the imported products, thereby remove the non-tariff barriers and tariff barriers. And successive governments have been reducing the custom duties. If you remember, when India signed the WTO agreement in the 1995 or 94 December, we gave a commitment that we will reduce the custom duty to 40% and 25% in respect of about 2,630 tariff lines. And we fulfilled the obligation in 5 years' time, which was given to us. But we didn't stop with that. We reduced it further. We had IT agreement whereby we agreed to reduce the custom duties on the IT product 0%, which we did. And therefore, successive governments have reduced the custom duties much below 25%, much below 40%, excepting where agricultural products are involved. But this year, you will see the government has made a very clear statement that I am reversing the trend. I am now going to increase the custom duties for certain products. And we identified those products and say, I want to increase the duty from 10%, 20%, 15%, 20%, etc., which he has done systematically. And I applaud that, because when countries like US are now getting into the level of mode of protectionism or make in America, etc., I think India should not lag behind. We reduce the custom duties to encourage the imports into the country and improve the competitiveness of Indian manufacturers. But in the process, if Indian manufacturers were getting less protection by way of custom duties being less, the finance minister answers them, don't worry, I'll give you more protection here. I am not looking at this as revenue measures, though revenue will come as a consequence. But it's basically to tell the world and also tell the manufacturers in India, in respect of these commodities, guys, you are going to have more protection by way of increased custom duties. That is the accent which I am seeing here, whether it's a cellular phone or automobile components or it is edible oil or something, etc. In all those cases, I see that current. The underlying thread is that here enough is enough. Now let me now protect my domestic industry. Let them make products in India. Let us make it more attractive to make products in India rather than attractive to produce from import from other countries. This is the accent which I am seeing, etc. I really applaud the minister for doing this.
Right. For the benefit of our viewers, Aditya, could you just quickly tell our viewers which are some of the products where the customs duty rate has been increased?
Okay. So in case of automobile parts, the customs duty. So for example, truck and bus radial tires has increased from 10 to 15%. In case of CKD, in Yes, in case of CKD imports of motor vehicles and motor cars or motorcycles, the customs duty has increased from 10% to 15%. In case of CBU imports of motor vehicles from 20 to 25%. LCD, LED, OLED TVs have increased. Perfumes have increased to 20%. You have cellular mobile phones now, which will attract 20%. And there are so many other products where the BCD has been hiked.
Right. So that's very interesting observation, and sir, thank you for those interesting insights. Any particular other proposals in the Finance Bill 2018 relating to indirect tax which caught your attention?
I mean, lots of things have been done. I don't know how much time you have.
Because particularly on the indirect tax, any one or two significant proposals that you would that merit attention and discussion?
On the trade facilitation measures, he has done a great thing. First thing, he has simplified the advance ruling mechanism for the customs. They expanded the definition of applicant, and they have also expanded the scope of the application, etc. And more important, they have said that you can now file the principal commissioner himself will be the person who will decide, and the appellate machinery also been introduced. That's one. The second important thing is notices issued under Section 28 of the Customs Act, show cause notices, must be adjudicated within 6 months' time, if it is the normal thing. And they get extension another 6 months. If it is beyond that, notice abates. Gone. If the notice is issued for suppression of facts, etc., the time limit for adjudication is 1 year, extend for 1 more year. If it done beyond that, bad. So these are the things which definitely puts, because there are cases where notice was issued 2003, 2004, yet to be adjudicated. All those cases now will have to be taken up. The department will have to necessarily do the matter as fast as possible. There's a very important provision. Settlement Commission have been some changes have been made, and they have also made it very clear under Section 11. Under Section 11, wherever there are prohibitions and restrictions, other acts, automatically they become the prohibition under Section 11. Now they say no, there must be prohibition under Section 11, making them an offence under Section 11. That's a very important amendment.
Right. Sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry, you were saying about the proposals. Yeah.
So what I would say is that there are several changes made in the Act, including Section 1, where the Customs Act applies the whole of India. They also said now it will also apply to persons non-resident in India for offence committed outside India will also be governed here. So therefore, people who are conniving with the Indian importers for manipulating invoices, etc., from outside, they will all be caught, and they are very careful about this. They can impose penalties from here. So it is a carrot and stick policy which the finance minister has applied. Carrot in respect of these trade facilitations, stick in respect of those people who are fraudulent and who are smugglers. For them, there is a very good stick. I think he has balanced it so well as far as this ministry is concerned.
I think that's a brilliant analogy, carrot and stick approach in the whole theme. Moving on to another related area, the economic survey talked about government being a major litigator, and of course, this fact is very well known. The economic survey also talks about a very high petition rate from the government and a very low success rate finally before the tribunal as well as High Court and Supreme Court. Any provisions in this budget which you think will sort of answer to the litigation scenario that is there, and any specific areas that you were hoping that perhaps in this budget to reduce the litigation which has not been addressed to?
I tell you, Amir, many of the litigations which are now before the courts and the tribunal ought not to be there. We are clogging the system, real clogging the system. Frivolous litigations, routine appeals, which is the order of the day. Any case, one thing which has introduced this time is that pre-consultation before issue show cause notice is an innovation. Under Section 28, if they are going to issue a show cause notice for a normal period, they will first of all come and tell you and call you and consult you whether we want to do it, we have got anything to say, even before the show cause notice. At this stage itself, if you give a proper response, they expect it. They don't issue a show cause notice, they close it. It's a very great thing. Similarly, audits, they have also prescribed time by which you have to finish the audits. So therefore, in the earlier regime, the officers had unlimited time. The assessors had to do within time. Now the game is getting shifted. Say the time is prescribed for the officers also to do their act properly within time. So this itself is one great thing. And apart from this, when you are putting the time limit for completing adjudication processes, appellate authority, what can they do, etc. The routine remand is no longer possible. Only in certain circumstances remand can be done. Otherwise, the appellate authority has to decide the matter on merits. So these are the situations I think he is bringing in, but lot more can be done to reduce the litigation. But I suppose we can expect from the next budget.
Sure. Very quickly, a quick question on GSTN and just an observation. In the finance minister's speech, he referred to linking of the credit availed by the small and medium size entities with the GSTN database. So just to set the context, when GSTN was set up, there were apprehensions on whether the data and the information in GSTN can be used for non-GST purposes. And I think this is the first instance wherein an official statement has been made that the GSTN data, which is indeed a valuable data, will be used for for the credit purposes to small and medium enterprises. Your take, sir, on whether we will see more such instances of GSTN data being leveraged and used for other areas of the economy and businesses?
I tell you, Honorable Prime Minister has said in Davos, whoever has the data is the world leader, is the king. And India is sitting on a huge data now. I don't expect the government to misuse it. But if that information is available to them to increase the tax base for direct taxes, I don't think anybody should shed tears. And this information, which direct tax are already collecting various information because of various transactions, the GST information is captured in much more scientific and systematic manner. And that collating with the other information can definitely give a lot more leverage for the government to trace those people who have not paid the tax and also go after the people who have paid less tax than what is due. I don't think we should have a serious objection if the government is using this information for catching those people defaulters. Of course, a larger discussion is going on about right to privacy and all those things. There's a matter is going on in Supreme Court. Therefore, we should not be discussing those issues at this point of time with regard to the right to privacy and also the use of this Aadhaar, whether it is right or wrong, etc. There's a big debate going on the Supreme Court Constitution bench. So we are not commenting on that.
Right. That brings me to the last point. We are poised for a sort of a very interesting 2018. The e-way effective, earlier today. We will be having soon another GST Council meetings, perhaps again looking at simplification of the GST returns, whether one-to-one matching stays. Your outlook for 2018, what are the one or two big ticket GST items that we should watch out for, and any particular areas where we will see a significant progress in 2018?
See, I think as far as the GST is concerned, the rates are getting stabilized. I don't think there is any more need for further alterations. Some minor tinkering can take place. Otherwise, I think the rates are getting stabilized. What I am worried about is the invoice level matching for the grant of the credit, whether the pre or post. Many countries tried and they could not succeed. But in India, they still want to do it. They have postponed it till 1st of April. Post April also, whether the system will be able to provide that support for the users to get the credit by using the GSTN, I am a big question mark. I have a real question mark. And today, when we are talking about e-way bill, the system is not able to handle the number of e-way bills as of now. And many clients are asking, what do we do? So, if that is the question of e-way bill itself, but matching this is a much, much more complicated matter. So, that is a question mark. The other one is reverse charge from the payment to be made by the registered assessees whenever they are buying from the unregistered people. So that is again a big question mark, whether that also must be, if that is permanently eliminated, that will ease lots of businesses, lots of problems. Because in any case, it is a script rework. Pay the tax and take the credit. What's the point in doing that? So these are the two things I think we should be watching out. Otherwise, over a period of time, I think GST will definitely stabilize.
I see you more optimistic and more positive about GST than earlier, Mr. Lakshmikumaran.
Amaya, one thing you must know, I am an eternal optimist.
Now, so on that note, we'll end this special budget hangout discussing Finance Bill 2018 nitty-gritties. Lots of very important areas in the fine print on the customs law as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Lakshmikumaran, for taking us through these nuances. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.